Please welcome to the stage, Art Hu.
All right. Hello, Hong Kong. Welcome back from the tea break. I hope all of you are looking as Amar looks. He looks like he had just had an extra 2 egg tarts, so he's very, very satisfied. So I hope you enjoyed a little bit of the break. We're in the home stretch for the plenary session, and I think we've got a treat for you. I'm Art Hu. I'm Lenovo's global CIO, and I run the delivery and technology function for our solution and services with Ken. So, to our panel, I think you've already heard today about, starting with Ken, the AI for all vision. And you've heard a number of stories about how Lenovo is working with the extended ecosystem, partners, customers, and together to bring that vision into a reality through these very compelling stories. I want to take it and zoom back a little bit, because we know AI. You've heard a lot of superlatives to discuss what is generative AI and what is it bringing, right? It is world-changing. It's a new era. It is paradigm-altering. And so as such, the zoom out is really to talk about not, yes, the technology and the empowerment it brings, but also really what lies ahead in the road for innovation. The panelists today that I'm going to join are actually from a breadth of walks in industry and business. So please join me in bringing out our panelists. Gordon Orr, our panelists, if they would come join me on stage. Yes, wonderful. So Gordon Orr, we have Linda Yao. We have Ted Swen. And Evan Ouyang. All right, panelists, please take your seat. And thank you so much for joining today. So rather than, a little bit non-traditional, rather than me going on and on for a few minutes about how wonderful they are, which they absolutely are, I'll introduce them as we get into the conversation so we can hear a little bit of it in context. So, we're entering the age of AI. And it's really important to think not just about the technology, but more broadly, because we exist not just as ourselves, not just as a project, not just as a company. And so to get us started, I'm actually going to turn to Gordon. So Gordon is the ex-chairman of McKinsey Asia, and he is also a member of multiple boards now, including at Lenovo. I've known Gordon personally for a number of years, and his breadth and depth of experience between Asia and Europe and the US is unparalleled. I think he's one of the most in-demand senior advisors and counselors to boards and CEOs around the world. So Gordon, thank you for joining us, and maybe I'll ask you to get us started. What do you see are the AI trends that are going to be center of mind for companies and boards in the next 2 years?
Sure, thanks. I had a chance to be in Europe last week at the Mobile World Congress, where, first of all, it was important to say Hong Kong was incredibly well represented. Tons and tons of Hong Kong startups there. So if any of you were at MWC, congratulations and well done on behalf of Hong Kong. There were also 100,000 other people there. And all they wanted to talk about was this, AI this, AI that, AI coffee, AI whatever, and all these partnership things you were talking about. Because you go to one stand and they'd have this display of like we've got 150 partners, and you go to the next stand and we've got 170 partners, and eventually you keep going to these stands and you realize that everyone's partnering with everyone. It's the most promiscuous thing that I've ever run across at this point in time, which I guess is good for us eventually, but it does create confusion. It creates enormous enthusiasm and energy, but the specificity of what does that actually translate into when I'm trying to say, what do I go back to my business, go back to my CEO and say, what am I going to do? So yeah, we've got 80, 90% adoption. I'd still call that, in most cases, it's trial. It's free. It's better than a free lunch. That's good. But, by the way, if McKinsey ever offers you a free lunch, take the lunch, not the project. Everyone's talking. What really, attracted people to specific stands, to specific discussions, was the concreteness of the case examples that they could really show and bring to life. And that I did think actually helped the hardware guys at the show, because the hardware guys were able to say, you know, we've come to you and helped you not just with a cute front end or, you know, something that's very, very specific, but can do the holistic, can do the hand-holding through from the diagnostic through to creating the solution to being there to keep it up and running. And so this year is all about scaling and getting from quick wins, things that aren't disruptive, things that you can drop into an existing function onto your existing IT stack, through to more of an end-to-end holistic solution. So rather than just saying, how does it improve productivity in the call center? Or my favorite areas is much more, how does it improve productivity in R&D? So we get products to market faster, whether it's the Lotus car, the Lenovo PC, or the Mate 1 robot, just the three that are. And you know, it's really, yes, we've talked a lot about it being in high tech, being in retail, financial services, professional services, but it's going to be much, much broader, was the other thing that I took away from this year. And all of us involved in the industry have to help reduce the anxiety of risks, whether it's, and we'll come to it, I guess, perhaps a little bit more, but operational risk, regulatory risk, reputational risk, are all pretty deep concerns and sort of reactions to, when Google goes off the deep end and trying to, manipulate its model, we all stand back as businesses and say, well, what happens if that happened to me?
Yep. Thank you, Gordon. So a lot of energy, I think you can sense that, and a lot of question marks as people are moving from trial and trying to make it concrete, both in the specific, but also more broadly. Let's move to Evan for a second. So Evan Ouyang, you are the group president of Animoca Brand. So Animoca is a leading Web3 company here that's based in Hong Kong, but has actually investments and interests all around. Evan is also someone I've known for a while, and he's been in consulting, he's been in transportation. Now I think of Evan really as a bold pioneer, because if you know about Web3, it's leading how do we have different models of ownership that tap into the new technologies that can help democratize the way we work, the way we play, the way we bank and we transact. So Evan, maybe you can also expand and share your view on what's front and center, because you're coming at it from a very different point of view about what's going to be top of mind from AI in the next couple of years.
No, thank you, Art. Well, we believe that ultimately the two really important trends right now is actually AI and Web3. Whereas right now AI is already very prevalent. Just saw a survey that says that 71% of companies has adopted AI. Web3 is actually a $2.5 trillion industry that is actually very small. The $2.5 trillion comes from cryptocurrency itself, but in terms of applications, the adoption isn't all there yet. And the world hasn't actually made up its mind, right? It's sort of like, you either like, oh, you're really deeply for it, or some people are like really sort of like iffy about it. We know at least in this part of the world, Hong Kong is deep for it. And for the reason that financial infrastructure requires this next stage of growth. That's why Hong Kong is going after it. Assets in China need to come out. Tokenization of assets is a big thing. So Web3 itself, I would say, is a very important trend that is way beyond cryptocurrencies, right? Web3 actually, what it actually entails is it is actually a philosophy, right? I would liken Web3 right now as the mid-90s internet, right? And every single time when an innovation like this happens, there are a lot of questions, right? When I was in college, we barely even used email, right? We don't have any room connectivity. I used to go to the computer center to do emails. That was at the time. When the internet came about, people are like, why do you even need it, right? This is about the read internet, right? Why do you even need it at that time? We can find information over, in the library and all that. But thereafter, we can't work without it. We can't leave even our mobile phones. Then Web 2 came along, which added writing to reading, right? And people are also asking, why is that important? Before Facebook and social media that came, why is that important? Well, we now know why it's important because everyone can publish, right? And as it's transformed industries, transformed news, transformed politics, in fact, right? Now in Web3, what does the component add? It's ownership, right? Data ownership, data sovereignty. That's the layer that will transform the internet for days to come. Now, explain that in terms of how that applies to AI, right? Ultimately, you would see that data is what is all about right now. The largest and the most valuable companies in the world are data companies, right? Right now, it's governed centrally. The databases don't talk to each other. You can log in on Google, Facebook, Microsoft, etc. But the data is all data giants. We're not compensated for that. In the future, near future, we believe that data will be self-sovereign, and it's portable. You can accrue reputation for it. Now, how is that going to work ultimately? It's going to be through things like zero-knowledge proof and decentralized identifiers. So right now, your ID, I would imagine, right, those of you who have kids, I think Google knows more about your kids than you do. I can pretty much guarantee that. They might know a little bit more about what you know, all the other stuff that you may not know what they tell you about what your kids do. They'll know a lot about it because you're creating data. You're not getting compensated for it. Now, over time, if you have self-sovereign data, just remember this concept, right? It doesn't have to tie to your government ID. It just needs to be tied with how you interact with the internet. On a permission basis, you share the data out and you get compensated for it. And that is very, very powerful as you look at different databases that will be built, right? And if I can just give an example, a simple example like medical data, which is singularly the most sensitive piece of data that each of us have, right? We're talking to NEOM right now, the Saudi Arabia, you know, the future city of the line, right? Very imaginary. Any local brands have a partnership with NEOM. We're talking to the healthcare team about how do we leverage that data in a way that is safe, right? Now imagine that we actually want to contribute in this day and age. We actually want to contribute to the problems of the world, but we want our data to be self-sovereign, to be private. If you can do it in a way that helps, you know, medical research and get compensated for it, you will share it. But you won't share it in this particular stage to say, oh, I'm going to share it to any, you know, drug company, data company, because it isn't safe, right? So overall, when you actually get to decentralized data, when you get to the Web3 world of actual data ownership, you can imagine how these databases will be used, and it'll be compensated, and it'll be private. That's how it will emerge from a high level.
Thank you, Evan. So you can see, actually, AI with some of the new technologies that are combining or even recombining to change the way of ownership of assets, especially around data, as the world generates more and more of it, as you've heard us talk about online. Very good. So let's move from what are some of the trends into how are companies, to where Gordon started off the panel discussion, how are some companies making the journey? So for this, Linda needs no further introduction, but what I will say in addition, because she was just up here, so you know her title, Linda is one of the animating forces behind our solution and services group, right? And I say that animating because she's both the brains as our strategy leader, as well as the brawn and as our operations leader. So she really helps drive the business. Linda, as you think about how to drive the business and how companies, where do you see companies today in the journey of making AI from trial to something that's much more focused?
Yeah, thanks, Art. I think that this is such an important question, right? Because the trend that Gordon mentioned about AI being kind of in a trial mode right now and Gen AI being better than a free lunch and figuring out how to make it real, we see that in the data. When we do our Lenovo CIO study, what we hear from you all is, you know, you've done a great job working with your boards and your stakeholders to get the budget for AI and Gen AI, right? Congratulations, because that is a hard thing to do. We see that you have worked with your organizations to make sure that your talent is ready, that your talent understands the need for AI, and they're ready and raring to go to adopt it and to learn about Gen AI and apply them to use cases. But what we also hear is only half of you feel confident in how to take the next step, right? The next step to either embark on experimentation or figure out how you take your year of experimentation and turn it into a scaled reality. So that trend we definitely see playing out in the data. Now, I think that what is going to be very important this year is for the AI community and AI partners and technology to come together to help companies and organizations assess where AI and Gen AI can truly make an impact versus where there's a great vision, but it's maybe not practical yet. One of the things that we have really honed inside of Lenovo is to understand those practicalities, both of the technology itself, including the dependencies on technical building blocks like what Evan spoke about with regard to Web3 and data. What's practical today versus what might be more practical tomorrow as the field evolves. We're also focused on honing what is pragmatic for each organization. Some organizations, some departments might be more ripe to adopt Gen AI, might be more ripe to adopt Copilot and AI PCs. Right? Let's start with them first. Get those learnings in, get those proof points at scale, and then we have a template to then copy and paste and replicate across the rest of the organization. Being practical, being pragmatic, using proven methodologies, right, that we have battle tested ourselves so that you don't have to go through the same pain and the same learnings, and making sure that you're working with a vendor and a partner that's partner-friendly. Because to Art's point, it takes an ecosystem. None of us have the silver bullet, but together we can orchestrate something that brings the best of each of these technical components to create something that can truly have an impact to the top and bottom line. That is what I think organizations and companies are really going to be focused on this year as the core objective.
Thank you, Linda.
So Linda, then, what are the 1, 2, or 3 applications within Lenovo that have scaled that you think are ready to go to mass market at this point? Less theory, but what are we selling?
That's a great question. Thank you for kind of really challenging me to make sure that this vision has a landing spot for reality. So when I look at where we have adopted AI internally, and Art is my #1 customer, right, as our global CIO, I really see the AI adoption happening in kind of 3 layers of complexity, right? The first is all about that AI technology backbone. This is like the data readiness that Evan spoke about, right? This is all about having the infrastructure, the right device enablement to make sure that we're ready to receive AI and ready to implement AI. So that we have in spades across the organization. I think Art has done an incredible job for us, working with us to make sure that when we have these AI use cases, that we can actually make them a reality. So that's the AI backbone, technology backbone of AI readiness. The next layer I'm very excited about because it's all about functional transformation. Where we see the biggest potential right now for use cases are some of those cross-domain, cross-departmental, functional improvement and kind of functional transformation use cases, for example, by adopting co-pilots or Gen AI assistants inside of our own customer experience centers, right? Adopting that inside of our own software engineering workforce, adopting that inside of our own marketing and HR and legal teams to help make each of us more efficient, kind of have each of our knowledge bases more augmented, but then also having it very much as part of the daily workflow of operations. That is where I see the biggest kind of immediate use cases is around functional transformation. However, I'm sure you'll also hear from Ted and Evan later, there's then another layer of what I call the industry use cases. Those industry use cases, I think, will be a little bit of the holy grail. As we move beyond functional transformation, which is cross-domain, being able to pair some of that technology learning and some of that potential of Gen AI with the industry-specific domain knowledge, like what you saw on stage with Lotus Engineering, right? Being able to pair that together to then transform an organization's product, right? To transform a company's business model, to make an impact not just to the bottom line, but to the top line. That is where I think the biggest innovators and adopters of Gen AI are going to see the most value in that early adoption.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Gordon, also for putting the challenge out there. That's actually the perfect segue because I wanted to ask Ted. So Ted leads our Lenovo PCCW solutions, also known as LPS, as our deputy CIO there. One of the things that I love about Ted, and I think it makes him perfect for this panel, I don't think many of you know this, but he has more degrees. Not only is he a doctorate, he's a doctor, but he also has more degrees than you can count on one hand. So I've really enjoyed getting to know Ted because he's a lifelong learner, and I think that's just so appropriate for this time as we're navigating the uncertainty, right? Lifelong learning, a passion to integrate that, and Ted really brings a wealth of having seen accounting, finance, operations, sales, business. He's been all over the world, and so I think it's perfect for the role. So Ted, building on what Linda said, lots of excitement, lots of building blocks are coming into being. Now the hard part, and this is what you're in the middle of, implementation. What do you see as some of the major gaps that our customers are seeing in the industry, and how do you counsel them to help overcome those?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Ars. I think first, most important is the gap of IT talent. I think there's no doubt about not only in Hong Kong, throughout the world, we see a lot of shortage of IT talents, right? And more important is, how about the AI knowledge? It's a new, people think AI is something new, but I can tell you it's not something new. I learned this in college before, but it's totally different from nowadays. So I see in Hong Kong, let's put the context in Hong Kong, I think we have a shortage of talent and also shortage of AI experts, first of all. Second, if you look at the organization, any organization in Hong Kong, like the results from the CIO survey, we understand a lot of our clients, a lot of CIO are actually embarking the AI journey. Okay, but think about how to start. As like Linda highlighted that, it could be of different maturity, different readiness, even across different departments within the same organization. So how to start? Okay, so based on my experience, which I learned from the NEOM project, which I actually worked in Saudi Arabia for a while. Okay, so we learned that actually if you really want to embark on a journey, we see that some departments, they might be more advanced, more robust. Some departments, they might be at the kindergarten state. Okay, so never mind. We start with an architecture principle, architecture framework first. So we build the foundation layer. Okay, so whoever ready, they can start the journey. Okay, so make sure that you have the right governance on how to use AI, how to use data. Because quite often that you can see some departments, they're reluctant to join. They have so many excuses, pushback. Most common pushback reasons, data, privacy. Okay, so how are we going to tackle this? So there must be a way that we have a common data platform or data governance committee in place. If we have that in place, that can ensure the data privacy issues. Of course, I'm not going to talk about all these technical details on how to protect the data. And secondly is, we all know that when we want to build a good AI platform, we must have processes, we must have tools, we must have people. I mentioned about the people. And also the domain knowledge. Linda mentioned about that. Do we have the real domain knowledge? Without the domain knowledge, you're only playing with the tools. Okay, some game tools, toys. Okay, so make sure that we also have the right people, get the buy-in from them and work and put them into the committee and work together. And then we look at the data. Okay, some departments, they might have some data duplicate with another department. So how going to resolve all this? Okay, or even the same AI algorithm. It could generate different results. And also the AI algorithm may be biased. So we really need to have a governance model, governance committee in place, not only look at the technical architecture framework, but also the AI usage. Okay, because in the end, the ethics of AI, using AI is very important. Okay. Last but not least, I mentioned about the technical infrastructure. Think about even within an organization. Okay, some departments, they might be still using some very old technology, and some may be using new technology. That doesn't matter. In the end, we have to build an integrated platform together. Okay, and how we're going to do it? I still go back to the technology framework. Okay, this is what I learned when I was the CTO in Saudi Arabia. Okay, we build a foundation layer. Whoever starts first, make sure that it follow the principle, follow the framework, and then gradually migrate to the overall enterprise architecture framework. So last but not least, I think is the gap is the buyout from the support from the senior management, the top management. Okay, without the support from the top management, I don't think this AI journey can be run smoothly or successfully. So just to give a couple of examples, how we're going to break down the silos of some of the organizations from my previous experiences. Okay, in my previous company, we used AI, okay, to improve the customer satisfaction, to improve the customer experiences. So where we get the data, I work in a railway company before. I think a lot of people from Hong Kong know that I work in a railway company before. Okay, so we have data from platform, we have data from train, we have data from shopping mall, we have data from residential areas, all data, but belong to different users. Data sovereignty, data ownership. So in order to break down all the silos, there must be a data governance process in place so that we get the data and look into how we can make full use of the data and then work out some AI algorithm. And that exercise actually significantly improved the business revenue of the shopping malls, because based on the data we see, we know who are the passengers going to a certain station. For that station, we know that there are some shopping malls, some outlet, and how we can attract that. And then from those data, we see actually for those who buy certain spot goods, they also spend money with McDonald's or Kentucky. So with using the AI algorithm to link up all this together and do a lot of marketing campaign to boost the revenue. So this is one of the very classic examples that we can use AI, but we need to break down the silo. We need to have a common data platform in order to implement the AI solution for the organizations.
Thank you,
And
Ted.
I think the way that you frame this adoption journey is actually very, very resonant with what we see from customers, right? Whether customers are adopting that AI technology backbone or those functional transformation initiatives or even the industry use cases, we do find that as we assess their AI readiness, the first things that we need to talk about are not necessarily the technology. The first thing is often security, right? Security, data privacy, data readiness, right? How mature is the company or the organization or the department on that pillar of AI readiness? The next one that almost immediately follows is people.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yes. How ready are the people, right? The change management.
The people, they're willing to embark on the journey.
Yeah, Art, if I may
Please,
add to that, because Ted worked at Neom in Saudi Arabia, and so did we at any Mocha brands. One of the things that we're doing for Neom is to build the infrastructure layer on blockchain to protect that data. Because Autonomous, which is the tech arm of Neom, is imagining a cognitive city, right? And the way they imagine it is that when you wake up in the morning, this is the coffee example, Gordon will love this, you know, you walk, they know your pattern, and you go in there and you pick up your coffee and you automatically charge, and you don't have to do a thing. They know how you think. I'm kind of like, okay, well, that's kind of cool, but how do you preserve the privacy layer of it? Now, this is where the whole blockchain aspect comes into it. So what we're trying to do is to help Neom build its own layer 1 blockchain so that it's compliant with its relevant laws, and at the same time, decentralizing the data in a permission manner, right? The most important thing is that, do I want this, right? If my coffee shows up at Starbucks and I walk up, I do have a pattern. I'm an afternoon coffee person. But if my coffee actually just shows up, it's a little bit scary. But if I give it permission, right, that's the whole point, is that I don't want my third-party data to be sitting where I don't want it to sit. right? And if my data is used, I want to know it's for my benefit and I get compensated for it if it's for third-party use, right? So that layer is extremely important, that infrastructure layer that powers AI and governance. And also one last point I'll make is that in the Satoshi Roundtable in Dubai, which is basically a CEO conference for Web3, we went around the room to look at sort of AI and how Web3 intersect, and almost everyone, there's one person who said that data should not be decentralized, but everyone else believes that data security is so important, and Web3 plays such a big role into making sure that governance is there. Otherwise, we're at the point about trust, isn't it, right? Geopolitically, everything is about trust, right? That's what we need as the infrastructure layer.
And I think this is the value and the potential of hybrid AI, right? We heard Lotus talk about it on stage. Also, with their customers, they're gathering usage data. They're gathering these usage patterns about how the customers are driving their vehicles, how they're using the product. And so being able to balance those kind of personal data, personal needs, and data privacy, while also being able to access the broader knowledge bases, right? All of the algorithms in the public domain, that I think is the potential and the value of having a hybrid AI approach. So I totally agree. And I think that once customers understand their security readiness and then the people readiness for adoption, then that is when they're ready to embark on how do I think about my technology? How do I think about my process? But there's almost this fundamental layer in the Maslow's hierarchy of AI needs that we have to make sure we have the right foundations first.
Yeah. Thank you. So I love this conversation. First, this panel basically runs itself, but you can actually see, no, it's actually quite good.
We're an
It makes my job
AI-driven
very
panel.
easy. Exactly. But you can see, starting from TED, it's how important it is to think systematically about it and applying it, as Evan said, to actually some very deep, this is a business conference, but we're also all people, we're all consumers. Right? These are also going to apply to very deeply human and very personal questions about what kind of autonomy, what kind of sovereignty do I want to exercise as well. So heading into the home stretch, I think that's a good segue because this is a good illustration of some of the tensions that we need to navigate and some of the questions. There's not consensus. And as each of you explore your path then, maybe I'll toss to Gordon to get us started on this topic. How do you think about navigating kind of the risk-reward balance as we think about these?
Well, to take your Maslow's hierarchy thingy and apply it to business, at the top of the pyramid is the board, right? You have to keep the board happy.
Good advice.
And all of you've worked in big listed companies. Now, you have all these committees, and most of them have a risk committee. And we have to put together a report that we give to shareholders and register with the exchange every year. And it says, geopolitics, top right-hand corner. Cybersecurity, top right-hand corner. And I guarantee, I've just been financial services board in London, private equity board in Europe, Hong Kong conglomerates, mainland food delivery. AI risk is going to be in the top right-hand corner from a board top-down viewpoint next year. Now, that doesn't mean the board has any idea, A, what the risk is, or B, how to mitigate it. But they know it has to be there at this point. And it means in the organization, you're going to have to educate them, help them get smart, and answer the questions around, because they're concerned about, let's be crude about it, going to jail. Or just blowing up the company, that our reputation's going to get shot because we'll have applied, something, and the IT guys have told us it's going to be wonderful, and something goes wrong somewhere at the edge of the organization. So it's from the board top down, it's regulatory, legal, reputational first, and you're coming up with, all of the operational, applying generative in scenarios that is just not quite fit for purpose at this point for whether it's, what high explainability is required, to say if you're turning someone down for credit, they can challenge you to explain it. It's a bit tricky with the AI. Or, to Evan's point on, high stakes scenarios around disease diagnostic. Yes, use it as part of the solution, but not the totality. the solution at this point. So I think the engagement from the technologists of you here in the room to the business leaders, to the governance of the board, try and join all those pieces together this year. It's really hard, but really, really important. And as you do it, if you're engaging with governments at the same time, bringing governments along in the journey and the dialogue on what's the right regulatory environment to encourage, but not to lose control. Getting that balance right is going to be a constantly evolving situation.
Thank you, Gordon. All right, so we're getting to the end. Let's bring this home. I will ask our panelists, again, to do my job for me. So if I could ask each of you for a snippet, a nugget of wisdom, 15 to 30 seconds that you would leave with our audience today about generative AI and how to think about it for the future. Please, Evan, if you'd get us started.
Yeah, well, I actually have a lot of thoughts, but I think the AI risk is already there, right? It's we've all watched Terminator, right? You know, before Arnold and John Connor debunked the whole thing, would be extinct anyway. So we know the risk, right? And it's getting more and more real in this sense, right? So to me, I'm just going to reiterate the importance of data governance and decentralizing so that it's actually safe, right? Ultimately, that's sort of what I want to talk about. I'm on two risk committees myself, on boards, and kind of when we look at this stuff, one is an insurance company, and there's a financial company, and obviously, as a board member, I'll be like, hey, is that right? This risk, is it and the critical? Is it, how do we de-risk it? And then back in the Web3 world, I'm kind of like, oh my God, right? The risk that we're taking is completely off the scale, but being entrepreneurs, we're like, we'll figure it out.
Thank you, Evan. Ted.
Okay, I think AI is here. Okay, it's not a question whether you really want to use AI or not. It's a question how soon you can use AI to help your business. In the past, when we talk about big data analytics, we talk about data rich, data poor. And now I think we should consider AI rich, AI poor. Okay, the more you can make use of AI, the more you can understand your business. There may be some areas that you cannot understand your business just mainly based on your financial report, your Excel spreadsheet. With AI, it can definitely help you to streamline your operations of business. Also help you to streamline your organization. And from that, because the operation changed, the organization structure may also change. And then it come up some new jobs, some new opportunities, and for new business and cost saving. So in short, AI is something inevitably that we all have to adopt and start using it before too late.
Thank you, Ted. 30 seconds, Linda.
I think if AI is inevitable, then it is really about the how rather than the what. How do we implement? And on that note, I hear a lot of, I would say, myths or trepidations about AI, right? You may be hearing from your nation or your community or your board or even as individuals that AI is risky, AI is not sustainable, AI is impersonal. But I really think it is all about the how you implement and how you get yourself ready. With the right kind of partners, with the right technology, all of those myths can definitely be busted. All of those risks can be mitigated or at least planned, right? A lot of this is about knowing what is necessary, being practical and pragmatic about our own readiness, and then charting the roadmap of how we get there to AI adoption on the right time frame, with the right technology basis, with the right processes and the change management.
Okay, and the how is just make sure when you're using AI, all of your devices have one of those neural processing units, NPUs, in it. Otherwise, you're doing AI with one arm tied behind your back, and it won't work. So NPUs, key.
All right, gang, let's give it up for our panelists. You heard it here first. Thank you.
Thank you.